In the State Archives of Forensic Medicine of South Australia, under the Police Department's archival code, a fragment of paper about 2 centimeters by 1.5 centimeters is stored, which was removed from a secret pocket in the clothing of a man whose body was discovered on the Somerton coast. On this scrap of paper, 2 words are printed typographically in Latin transliteration of Persian: Tamam Shud. In a literal translation from the official report of the linguistic examination by the Ministry of Defense, this means completion, finale, or end. An examination of the paper fiber structure and the typographical impression revealed that this fragment had been physically cut from the final page of a rare New Zealand edition of the translation of Omar Khayyam's poems, published by Whitcomb and Toombs. The method of concealing this artifact in the secret fob pocket of the trousers, carefully sewn shut from the inside with a professional stitch, indicates the deliberate nature of the concealment and the use of information masking techniques characteristic of the operational activities of clandestine structures. This document served as the starting point for launching one of the most extensive multi-agency investigations of the post-war era, involving the interests of national security agencies, criminal police, and diplomatic missions of several countries. Before we proceed to a detailed deconstruction of this archival case, based solely on verified reports, interrogation protocols, and modern genetic genealogy data, we ask you to subscribe to our channel. Your subscription allows us to continue this complex research work aimed at demythologizing historical events, conducting a critical audit of sources, and restoring institutional truth based on authentic documents and archival materials. An analysis of the political anatomy of the space in which this event occurred requires turning to the geopolitical situation of late December 1948. The Australian Union was, during this period, in a state of deep institutional transformation triggered by the onset of the Cold War. The country's territory had become a key testing ground for Anglo-American military technical programs, including the establishment of the secret Woomera rocket range in 1947. At the same time, according to declassified materials from the Venona project, the Soviet intelligence network was actively operating within the Australian Department of External Affairs, systematically leaking highly classified diplomatic and military strategic information. British and American intelligence services exerted strong pressure on the government in Canberra, demanding an immediate reform of the security apparatus, which subsequently led to the creation of the Australian Security Intelligence Organisation, ASIO, in March 1949. The social composition of individuals involved in the operational environment of that time included former technical military personnel, engineers, radio operators, and displaced persons from Europe who possessed specialized skills that could be used in intelligence operations. It was in this atmosphere of heightened counterintelligence surveillance that the 1st of December 1948 was marked by the discovery of a man's body on Somerton Beach, whose identity and purpose for being in Adelaide remained undetermined for over 70 years due to a lack of documents. A detailed analysis of the socio-economic context of post-war Australia allows for a deeper understanding of the conditions in which Karl Webb operated. The late 40s were marked by a severe shortage of consumer goods and the introduction of a rationing system, which forced citizens to resort to the black market. This explains why cigarettes of the Kensitas brand, transferred into a pack of cheaper Army Club cigarettes, were found in the pockets of Webb's jacket. From the perspective of covert logistics, such a step could have been an attempt to save money as well as a method of marking affiliation with a certain group of people. Customs Department reports from 1948 note that the smuggling of tobacco products from the United States of America and Great Britain was tightly controlled by criminal syndicates, which often collaborated with the technical specialists of port docks to coordinate illegal shipments. Consequently, the presence of an American-made comb, not supplied to Australia through official trade channels, confirms the deceased's connection to channels of illegal goods distribution or his contacts with the crews of American merchant ships, which regularly called at the port of Adelaide. According to the report of Constables Moss and Hendry, who arrived at the scene at 6:30 in the morning, the body was found in a semi-reclining position against a stone retaining wall opposite a home for disabled children. An external examination revealed an impeccable yet climatically inappropriate wardrobe for a South Australian summer. The deceased was dressed in a white shirt, a red-white-blue tie, brown trousers, socks, shoes, and a gray-brown double-breasted jacket. The investigation paid particular attention to the fact that absolutely all factory labels and tags on the clothing had been neatly cut off. In security service practice, this circumstance is classified as a standard agent de-identification protocol, used to complicate establishing the country of origin and supply channels of an operative. No identification documents, wallet, or cash were found in the clothing pockets, ruling out the version of a simple robbery for profit. Items seized included an unused second-class train ticket from Adelaide railway station to Henley Beach station, a bus ticket to Glenelg, a pack of Army Club cigarettes containing 7 cigarettes of the more expensive Kensitas brand inside, a Bryant and May matchbox, an aluminum American-made comb, and half a pack of Juicy Fruit chewing gum. A critical analysis of the testimony of a witness named O'Neill occupies a special place in the case materials. He claimed to have seen the Somerton Man at the railway station several hours before his presumed death. O'Neill reported that the deceased had purchased a ticket to Henley Beach station, but for unknown reasons did not use it, instead opting to board a bus to Glenelg. In criminal police reports, this step is considered a classic maneuver to evade possible surveillance or a change in the meeting place with an informant under time pressure. The bus route provided greater anonymity, as tickets for it did not have serial numbers and were not recorded at the station's central ticket office. This logistical choice indicates that Webb possessed a map of the area and had a clear understanding of public transport timetables, refuting the version of his random appearance in the city in a state of disorientation or severe mental distress. The mechanics of the investigation became significantly more complicated when on January 14, 1949, staff at Adelaide railway station discovered a brown suitcase in the luggage storage deposited on November 30, 1948. That is, a day before the body was found. An archival audit of the suitcase's contents confirmed its direct connection to the deceased. It contained a spool of orange Barber brand thread, absolutely identical to that used to stitch the secret pocket in the trousers of the Somerton Man. In addition to civilian clothing, also devoid of any labels, the suitcase contained tools characteristic of a technical specialist or quality inspector: an electrical screwdriver, a table knife, skillfully sharpened and turned into a shortened, sharp instrument, scissors with additionally sharpened ends, as well as stencil brushes and a can of liquid zinc. The presence of these items indicates that the deceased's activities were related to the maintenance of precision instruments, radio-electronic equipment, or the marking of cargo in industrial ports. Notably, the investigation discovered on 3 items of clothing from the suitcase labels with the surname Keane and the initial T, which had been missed during the cleanup. However, a cross-check of all missing persons lists in Australia, New Zealand, and Britain for this surname yielded no results, confirming the use of false identifiers. Criticism of forensic sources reveals clear contradictions between the initial examination of the body on the beach and the results of a detailed laboratory analysis conducted several weeks later. The initial report by constables stated that no traces of sand or seawater were found on the deceased's clothing, except for a small amount of dirt on the heels of his shoes. However, upon examination of the trousers from the suitcase found in the storage locker, experts discovered a significant amount of sand in the trouser cuffs. This fact indicates that Karl Webb visited the beach or coastal area long before his death, possibly for reconnaissance or to organize a cache. The police pathologist ignored this coincidence, recording in the final document that the suitcase and the body were investigated as independent objects, which significantly delayed the establishment of the truth and points to the low qualifications of the local detective personnel, who lacked experience in handling complex counterintelligence cases. A critical stage in studying the conspirators' encryption systems was the discovery of the car in which that very copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, from which the final words were cut, had been left. According to the testimony of the car's owner, who wished to remain anonymous in the investigation materials, the book had been placed on the back seat of his car, parked in Glenelg, around the end of November 1948. During a detailed examination of the inside back cover under ultraviolet light, experts revealed 5 lines of handwritten text consisting of capital letters of the Latin alphabet. The second line was carefully crossed out with a horizontal line, which in cryptographic analysis indicates a correction of an error made by the operator while encoding the message in real time. The letter combinations had no linguistic structure in any of the known European languages. Analysis conducted by the cipher section of Australian Naval Intelligence showed that this text represents a classic one-time pad cipher, where the text of the book itself was used as the key. This encryption method possesses absolute cryptographic strength, provided the key is used only once and does not fall into the hands of counterintelligence. Consequently, the transfer of the book served not merely as a symbolic act, but as a logistical operation to deliver the cipher key for conducting a communications session. Examining the structure of the cipher pad found on the book's cover requires an understanding of the mathematical principles used in mid-20th century cryptography. The letter rose, beginning with the combinations MRGOAB, were studied by the leading code breakers of the Commonwealth for 40 years. The 1953 report by the head of the Naval Cipher Section states that frequency analysis of character distribution rules out the use of simple substitution or transposition codes. The crossed-out line indicates that the encoding was done manually, possibly under poor lighting or under psychological pressure. The fact that a poetic work by Omar Khayyam was chosen as the key text points to the high intellectual level of the conspirators, who used complex cultural codes to disguise their communications. Such methods were common among special agents during the global conflict, when classical cipher machines were unavailable or their use could be easily detected by signals intelligence services. In addition to the encrypted text, an unregistered telephone number was discovered on the book's cover, which led the investigation to Jessica Thompson, who lived in the Somerton Park area, just 400 meters from where the body was found. The interrogation protocols of this witness, recorded by criminal police detective Lonergan, show deep internal contradictions and signs of external pressure on the investigation. Jessica Thompson categorically denied any acquaintance with the deceased and could not explain how her personal number ended up in the book. However, Detective Cleland noted in his report that, At the moment she was shown the plaster death mask of the Somerton man's face, the witness exhibited an extreme degree of emotional destabilization, was on the verge of losing consciousness, but refused to change her testimony. A subsequent audit of her biographical data revealed that during World War II, she worked as a nurse in a hospital and had skills in handling highly toxic medical substances, and also maintained contacts with individuals associated with the Australian Army's communications system. Due to political directives, police officials did not dare to use harsher interrogation methods on her, and her testimony was accepted as the official version, leading to the investigation being shelved. A counterintelligence analysis of the case revealed another documentary link. In 1945, Jessica Thompson gave an identical copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam to a young artillery officer, Alfred Boxall, who during the war served in a special water transport unit and was involved in securing secret logistics routes. Initially, the investigation assumed that the body on the beach belonged to Boxall, but the latter was found alive in Sydney, and his copy of the book was completely intact, with an inscription in Jessica's handwriting confirming their close connection. A comparison of these two copies of the same rare edition points to the existence of a closed cell or network of informants who used specific literature as an operational tool for identity verification during personal meetings, or as a code base for exchanging cipher messages. Boxall's interrogation protocols from the cipher department indicate that he denied any involvement in post-war intelligence activities. However, his archived personal file at the Ministry of Defense still contains classified paragraphs relating to the period of 1948. In the context of the institutional rivalry between the South Australia Police and federal security agencies, the refusal to grant access to the Jessica Thompson interrogation materials played a key role. Federal agents overseeing the Venona project feared that revealing Thompson's connections to former military intelligence officers could compromise the channels for obtaining information on the Soviet agent network. Because of this, covert pressure was exerted on the investigation to minimize mentions of her name in open court proceedings. The coroner's court, which sat in 1949 and 1950, was forced to return an open verdict, stating death by poisoning from an unknown substance, without identifying any persons involved in the death of the Somerton Man. This legal compromise allowed the official investigation to be closed, while keeping the mechanisms of interaction between the civilian police and military departments secret. Further archival research revealed that a separate dossier on Jessica Thompson existed in the files of the Australian Security and Intelligence Service, opened under the secret classification in 1951. This dossier contained regular external surveillance reports documenting her meetings with foreign citizens arriving at the port of Adelaide. This fact confirms that her status in the Somerton Man case was not that of a casual witness, but was part of the operational interest of intelligence services, who viewed her as a potential link in a chain for transmitting secret information outside the country, which completely changes the institutional assessment of the investigation and shifts it from the category of criminal incidents to that of matters of national scale. A forensic audit of the autopsy protocol compiled by Dr. John Dwyer allows for a critical assessment of the causes of the cessation of existence of the Somerton Man. According to the medical conclusion, death occurred at approximately 2 o'clock in the morning on the 1st of December, 1948. Internal examination recorded acute congestion of the internal organs. The mucous membrane of the pharynx was hyperemic. Signs of superficial ulceration of the mucosa were found in the esophagus, and a massive accumulation of blood mixed with food remnants among which fragments of a meat pie were identified, was observed in the stomach. The liver and spleen were significantly enlarged and engorged with blood, and the vessels of the brain were in a state of pronounced congestion. Dr. Dwyer came to the unambiguous conclusion that these pathological changes could not have been caused by natural causes or chronic diseases. The investigation put forward a hypothesis about the use of a fast-acting toxic agent causing paralysis of the vascular system and cardiac arrest. However, a repeat toxicological analysis conducted by government chemist Roger Noyce did not detect traces of known poisons such as arsenic, hydrocyanic acid, or strychnine. This indicates the use of rare plant glycosides, for example, digitalis or uabain, which are rapidly metabolized in the body and do not leave residual chemical compounds in a standard analysis, which is a characteristic feature of special operations for the physical suppression of undesirable witnesses or agents who have violated the internal regulations of an organization. An analysis of the witness testimonies of persons who were on the Somerton coast on the 30th of November, 1948, demonstrates serious discrepancies caused both by subjective perception and possible intentional misleading of the investigation. A married couple named Stroups, at 19 hours 30 minutes, noticed a man lying on the sand in the very spot where the body was discovered in the morning. They stated they saw him raise his right arm up, and then it fell helplessly, which they interpreted as a gesture of a drunk or sleeping person. However, other witnesses, who passed by at exactly 2200 hours, stated that the man lay absolutely motionless, and no signs of a struggle or the presence of other persons were noticed around him. The contradiction lies in the fact that, according to the conclusion of forensic experts, at 19 hours 45 minutes, the air temperature and the state of the deceased's muscle tone indicated that the process of deprivation of life could have begun significantly earlier. There is a well-founded assumption that the witnesses saw two different people, or that the movement of the body to the beach was carried out in the interval between 2200 hours and 1 o'clock in the morning, when the coastline was completely deserted. The logistics of the operation to deliver the body to the beach required the presence of a vehicle and at least two operatives capable of carefully placing the corpse, simulating a natural death in sleep to avoid prematurely triggering a criminal investigation. A critical audit of the suicide version of Karl Webb's death by poison reveals its complete untenability from the standpoint of conspiratorial behavior logistics. Individuals intending to voluntarily end their existence rarely expend significant effort on meticulously removing all manufacturers' labels from their wardrobe and cutting tags off personal items in a suitcase. Such actions require several hours of painstaking work and are conducted solely for the purpose of protecting the structure for which the operator worked. Furthermore, the purchase of public transport tickets and the checking of luggage into a storage locker indicate an intention to continue movement after completing the operational task. Webb's elimination, recorded by the pathological changes in his internal organs, occurred suddenly for him, possibly during a meeting with persons whom he fully trusted and who passed him a poisoned product disguised as ordinary rations or a cigarette, leading to the rapid cessation of his existence without visible signs of a struggle on the sand of Somerton Beach. Institutional pressure on the investigative bodies from the federal government of Australia intensified after information about a possible espionage trail was leaked to the press. The head of the South Australian Police was forced to coordinate his actions with representatives of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Due to the absence of direct evidence pointing to a specific state, official reports deliberately shifted the public's focus to a domestic version or suicide. This allowed for the avoidance of an international diplomatic scandal and concealed the vulnerability of Adelaide's port and transport infrastructure to foreign agents. Forensic archives show that all original detective working notebooks from the first weeks of the case were seized by special department officers and subsequently destroyed under the pretext of expired retention periods, which is a gross violation of standard criminal case management protocol and indicates an operation to sanitize the documentary trail. The legal and procedural consequences of this case had a radical impact on the reform of the entire system of civil status registration and criminalistics accounting in Australia. The Somerton Beach case demonstrated the complete ineffectiveness of existing personal identification methods under conditions of professional counteraction by clandestine structures. It was after this incident that mandatory fingerprinting of all persons entering the country on visas of certain categories was introduced into Australian police practice, along with tightened control over the production and distribution of pharmaceuticals containing high-concentration cardiac glycosides. The investigation documents became a classic textbook for police academy cadets on the subject of countering de-identification and analyzing hidden cryptographic systems in an urban environment. The influence of the Tamam Shud case on the development of international legal cooperation was expressed in the creation of new protocols for the exchange of criminalistics information between Commonwealth countries. In the early 1950s, the UK Ministry of Internal Affairs initiated the creation of a single centralized database of unidentified corpses bearing signs of involvement in intelligence agency operations. The experience of the Adelaide investigation showed that the isolationism of regional police departments and the lack of direct access to the files of Scotland Yard and the United States Federal Bureau of Investigation created ideal conditions for the infiltration of foreign agents. The new instructions required the immediate transfer of all recorded encrypted communications and samples of textile fibers to the Central Forensic Laboratories in London, which significantly curtailed the autonomy of colonial officials and laid the groundwork for the global integration of counterintelligence agencies during the era of nuclear confrontation. A major breakthrough in the archival investigation occurred only in 2022 through the application of advanced forensic genetic genealogy methods by a team led by Professor Derek Abbott from the University of Adelaide and American specialist Colleen Fitzpatrick. The subject of the research was the deceased's hair, which had been preserved in the plaster cast taken from the face of the Somerton Man in 1949 prior to his burial. The use of high-throughput DNA sequencing technology allowed for the reconstruction of the complete mitochondrial genome and a significant portion of the deceased's nuclear DNA. Through cross-analysis of the obtained genetic profiles with civilian genealogy databases, the researchers managed to build an extensive family tree that led to a specific individual. The identity of the Somerton Man was verified. He was Karl Charles Webb, born on November 16, 1905, in Footscray, a suburb of Melbourne. This documented fact completely debunked numerous mystical theories and elevated the investigation to the level of precise biographical analysis. Of particular interest is the legal aspect of the exhumation of the Somerton Man's body, sanctioned by the Attorney General of South Australia in 2021. This procedure required coordination between several government departments, including the Department of Health, the Police Department, and the Cemetery Management Board. The exhumation was conducted under heightened secrecy to prevent information leaks to the media. The objective of the operation was to extract bone fragments and teeth for in-depth DNA analysis at the University of Adelaide's Forensic Genetics Laboratory. The fact that DNA was successfully extracted not from bone tissue, which had suffered severe degradation due to the high acidity of the soil at West Terrace Cemetery, but from hair preserved inside the plaster cast, demonstrates the unique nature of forensic logistics. This molded artifact, created in 1949, paradoxically preserved the biological material in perfect condition, protecting it from external environmental influences for 73 years, which became the decisive factor in finally establishing Karl Webb's identity. An examination of the living conditions Karl Webb experienced in Adelaide allows for the reconstruction of his final hours with minute-by-minute accuracy. According to railway ticket office records, on November 30th, 1948, Webb arrived at Adelaide station on the morning train from Melbourne. His first action was to deposit a suitcase in a luggage locker, indicating an intention to spend a limited time in the city and a lack of plans to check into a hotel for an extended stay. After this, he purchased a ticket for a suburban train to Henley Beach, but did not use it, as his plans changed due to either receiving new instructions or confirming surveillance. Instead, he proceeded to the bus stop on Collins Square, from where he took a bus to Glenelg. There, he likely performed a dead drop of a key book via a parked car, after which he proceeded on foot towards Somerton Beach. This trajectory of movement indicates strict adherence to a prearranged plan, where each location served as an operational point for transferring information or verifying route security. By profession, Webb was an electrical engineer and a master craftsman in the manufacture of precision measuring instruments. This technical education fully explains the presence in his luggage of a specialized screwdriver, a sharpened knife, and modified scissors, which he used in his professional activities for stripping cable insulation and adjusting relays. Furthermore, official electoral rolls from the state of Victoria confirm that Webb frequently changed residences and had an interest in horse race betting, which required the use of complex mathematical calculation systems akin to the principles of cryptography. The most crucial confirmation of the correct identification was the discovery of familial ties. Karl Webb's own sister, Frida, was married to a man with the surname Keane. This explains the presence of tags with the Keane surname on clothing in the suitcase, which apparently passed to Karl from a relative, a standard economizing practice in the post-war years of material scarcity. Divorce proceedings documents between Karl Webb and his wife Dorothy Robertson, dated 1947, shed light on his motives for moving to South Australia. According to Dorothy's statement filed with the Melbourne court, her husband was of a reclusive character, suffered from outbursts of uncontrolled aggression, and left home in April 1947, after which his whereabouts remained unknown to relatives. During the court hearings, it was established that Dorothy had moved to live in South Australia, in a suburb of Adelaide. Thus, Karl Webb's logistical route in November 1948 was driven by attempts to track down his former wife. However, the motives for his presence in the immediate vicinity of Jessica Thompson's house and the presence of her telephone number on the cover of an Omar Khayyam book still require detailed study. Jessica Thompson could have acted as an intermediary or a landlord from whom Dorothy Robertson might have sought refuge, or Webb could have used her contacts to gather information. Contradictions in Jessica Thompson's statements during interrogations in '48 could be explained by her reluctance to disclose details of private life related to sheltering a woman from a pursuing aggressive husband, or by her own fear of becoming involved in legal proceedings. An analysis of Karl Webb's family tree, reconstructed in 2022, opens new horizons for understanding his internal motives and movement trajectory. His origins from the family of Richard Augustus Webb and Eliza Amelia Morris Grace connected him to the old industrial districts of Melbourne, where defense factories were concentrated during the war. Webb's work at electrical equipment manufacturing plants imposed secrecy obligations on him, as many of these factories fulfilled orders for the British Admiralty. His sudden disappearance in April 1947 coincided with the beginning of a large-scale loyalty check of technical personnel initiated by the Anglo-American Allies. Webb could have become the subject of an internal investigation, which forced him to sever ties with his family and begin a covert lifestyle, moving between states under assumed names or using the documents of his relatives, in particular his brother-in-law Thomas Keane, whose initials were found on the belongings. Interrogation protocols of Karl Webb's relatives, conducted by modern researchers based on family archives, confirm that after 1947, there were no mentions of his fate within the family. His wife, Dorothy Robertson, in her application for divorce, noted his extreme unsociability, an interest in writing poems of destructive content, and a constant fear of persecution. These symptoms, which modern medicine might classify as manifestations of a paranoid syndrome, could have had real foundations in the conditions of the strict counterintelligence regime of the late 40s. If Webb, due to his professional activities, became involved in transferring technical documentation or witnessed illegal operations in the defense sector, his attempts to hide in South Australia were driven by a desire to avoid physical elimination by his former employers. Nevertheless, the institutional context of the Cold War continues to leave its imprint on the assessment of this case. The fact that Alfred Boxall, connected to Jessica Thompson, had direct ties to military intelligence, and Jessica herself lived in close proximity to strategic communication facilities, leaves open the question of Karl Webb's possible use as an unwitting courier or an object of surveillance by intelligence services. The inventory of Karl Webb's property, compiled after his elimination, includes several personal letters, the recipients of which were classified by South Australian police until the 70s of the current century. Examination of these letters shows that Webb attempted to re-establish contacts with former colleagues from Melbourne defence plants, which could have aroused suspicions from counterintelligence control bodies conducting strict monitoring of any movements of technical specialists between states. A critical audit of the failure of the initial investigation demonstrates that South Australian police made a series of logistical errors due to a lack of coordination with federal structures. The publication of the deceased's photograph in the press without prior cross-referencing with the tax and electoral department files of the neighbouring state of Victoria delayed the identification process for decades. This benefited certain political forces seeking to use the Somerton Man case as media cover to divert attention from real failures in the counterintelligence support of the Venona project. The cessation of active investigative actions in mid-1949 and the subsequent burial of the body under the anonymous inscription "Destiny Unknown" solidified a status quo that suited both the local police and federal departments. The fate of the Society's archives and investigative materials in the Tamam Shud case reflects typical handling practices for sensitive information. Most of the original evidence, including the Book of Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam itself, found in the car, was irretrievably lost from the evidence storage between 1950 and 1960. The official explanation states that the items were destroyed during a scheduled disposal of unclaimed property. However, the absence of destruction records indicates their possible removal by representatives of federal security agencies for inclusion in closed archives. The surviving plaster death mask and several strands of hair remain the only physical evidence available to independent researchers in the 21st century. Using the methods of the archaeology of power, we can reconstruct the events of Karl Webb's final days as a result of the intersection of a personal drama of a determined loner and the rigid administrative control mechanisms of the early Cold War era. His movements on Australian railways, the use of luggage lockers, the purchase of various cigarette brands, and the tailoring of clothing without labels point to a developed habit of secrecy, formed by years of work in the defense sector or caused by a profound psychological transformation. The deprivation of his life through the introduction of an unidentified toxin, as recorded by the pathological anatomical condition of the organs, indicates a high probability of professional intervention aimed at the immediate cessation of his existence due to his having approached a closed zone of interests or representing a direct security threat to persons involved in intelligence activities within the territory of Adelaide. The political consequence of this incident manifested in the consolidation of intelligence agency resources and the complete elimination of state autonomy in matters of conducting counterintelligence investigations, which finalized the formation of the modern architecture of the Australian Commonwealth's state security organs.